Hey friend, I am so excited to tell you this is episode 50 of God's Power Stories. I cannot believe it, and I feel so blessed by God to be used in this way. Some people have been asking me, how can we support God's Power Stories? We want to blow this thing up. We want to grow this thing like never before, and we want to be a part of it. So I would just say, hey, it's episode 50. Would you consider a $50 donation to God's Power Stories? But whatever amount God has laid on your heart, we would very gratefully receive it. We've got a way for you to donate right in our show notes. You'll find the link there. So getting back to our episode for today, I am so excited to bring to you an interview with Reverend Beth Caulfield. If I had to summarize Beth's story in one phrase, I would say, yes, Lord. Because Beth has said yes to God again and again and again. Oftentimes, God has grabbed Beth when she was in a situation where she felt like she knew the direction that God was taking her. And then God asked her to pivot again and again and again. So Beth is an ordained elder in the Global Methodist Church. Her first full-length film, which is called Conceivable, will be released to theaters and digital platforms worldwide over the next year. So you are going to want to remember Beth's name. You're going to want to remember the film name Conceivable. And you actually can get it into your churches, or if you have some type of a ministry that you're involved in that helps women choose life, you can get this film as a pre-screen, and I encourage you to do that. There is so much to cover here with this story with Beth. Let's get right to it. Does God seem hateful to you, like he's looking for ways to trip you up? Does the thought of opening his word seem daunting and intimidating? Hi, I'm Anna, your host for God's Power Stories, where we connect with God's love through the power of his stories. I believe that God loves us more than we can comprehend, and we experience that love through stories. If you're here to connect through stories about the power of God, with the wind of the Holy Spirit at your back, you're in the right place. Let's let God light our path so we can take that next step toward the fullness of life he has planned for us. Grab your cup of coffee, that Diet Coke, or flavored water. Breathe. Let's dig in to God's Power Stories. It is my honor to bring to you today Beth Caulfield. And Beth, I know that the first time I think I ever got to see you, it was at the Well Conference. And I think it was maybe when you had this idea for a film. I don't even know if it was a twinkle in your eye yet, but tell me a little bit about how you got started at the Well, how you even found out about it, and how God used maybe that experience to bring some of your creative ideas to light.
Oh, great. Well, first, Anna, thank you for having me on this podcast. All that you do, and this is such a powerful ministry because I really believe, in fact, I just preached this past Sunday, that it's our stories that keep our faith alive, and passing them along is so critical. So I loved it when I saw what your podcast was about and all that you're doing. So thank you, thank you. And thank you for wanting to hear a little bit more about mine. The first time I went to the Well, I had this screenplay sitting in a contest for the Well. It was a very different endeavor for me, but that's kind of been the story of how God has kept my ministry moving along. I am someone who kind of has this gift of new beginnings, if you will. And it has been really just a rich ride for me. God knitted me in my mother's womb, right? And he knew exactly how he was going to make me and exactly what would give me passion and drive and abundant life as long as I stuck close to him. And I've tried to do that. My ministry is unique to me, as is everyone's. I was born of parents who were rich in faith and actually great grandparents and so forth. I'm from Alabama. My parents were Methodist and Pentecostal and a little Southern Baptist thrown in there. And they seemed to feel all of those things were very different. And we had all kinds of theological conversations at the dinner table as I was a kid. But I was raised knowing that I had a great grandfather who had prayed for my salvation and for the generations to come way before I was born. I never even met him. So I came from that kind of environment. And like many kids raised in the faith, chose it for myself when I was 13. I had been at a country church revival meeting all week with my grandparents. They're kind of reluctantly, but listening. And something touched my heart. And I wasn't the kind of kid to go running up to an altar call, but I went home and I prayed for Jesus to come into my heart and that I would surrender to him. And it scared me to death. And I ran to my grandmother and told her what I'd done. And I said, but I don't feel any different. And she said, you will. And she was right. My story goes on like many as I continue to grow and experience a lot of different things in life, especially going off to college and so forth. I didn't focus on my faith. And at that point in life, I really hadn't made Jesus Lord. I had made a profession of faith, but he wasn't Lord of my life. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, my husband and I had been married for a couple of years, and he had an illness, a life-threatening illness that really brought us back to our faith. And we experienced through the faith of family and prayers over him a healing and really a miraculous one of him. And
Mm.
it got us thinking and it
Yes.
got our hearts. So we went back to church and became involved with our faith. And when we were in our early 30s, we had a couple of little kids by then, a preschooler and a toddler. I was in the corporate world, I should say this. I was working for Fortune 50 companies, working for an international paper and Honeywell, and I worked for Lockheed Martin and living very much so into that life. But little kids grab your heart too. And when my husband had an opportunity to move us to Paris, France, I took a hiatus from work and we moved there. And first thing we did was find a church, it's the American church in Paris. And
Mm.
someone came up to me and said, there's this great Bible study program that we go to, meets at a different church. It's called Community Bible Study International, but you'll get 2 hours of adult company and your kids will be taken care of. And I
Mm.
said, I'm there.
Sign me up.
Sign me up. And that is a great way to get young women's attention. And it was life changing. I really got into the word, wound up becoming a small group leader, and then more than that, becoming the director of the whole program there in France. We were a group of men and women who were from all over the world, from all different Christian faith backgrounds. We met in a Roman Catholic church. And the biggest thing that I learned was that no matter what your background, your status in life, your country of origin, you could still know the same Jesus. When we got together and did our God talk and told our stories through those Bible studies, we just bonded knowing the same Jesus. And that became a very important part of my faith journey as that's been challenged over the years, with many people saying that Jesus is different to different people. Well, my experience is no. The Jesus of the scriptures rings true to people of faith, no matter what their backgrounds are. So we did that. We moved back to the US, stayed involved with CBS, was called into starting prison ministries, did that through just some amazing circumstances and ran Bible studies at men's and women's prisons until I had a very stark dream. And that dream said, go to seminary. And I was
Wow.
40 years old. And it was at a time when my kids were starting to get a little older. And I was thinking about going back to work and so forth, and praying about what was the right thing, not thinking at all that it was going to
You're
be
like,
that.
I think I might have heard wrong.
Yeah,
What
that's
was your
exactly it.
original education in?
Communications at the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And, I was always a writer, and that comes into play. And so my career was in human resources. I did a lot of presentations, but I also did a lot of employee relations. People used to call me their priest at work. So God had this perfect way of knitting all these things together, whether I saw it or not. So I went on to seminary at 40 years old. It was God ordained in that I didn't want to do it, but I went obediently, interviewed at the seminary. They gave me a full scholarship, which was a sign.
Yes,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
and even furthermore, it was a seminary that I knew was much more progressive, which was not something I was interested in. In
Hmm.
fact, when I went to the interview, I had a little bit of an attitude, and I said, "Why should I come here?"
Hmm.
And they respected that, however, and they respected having more viewpoints in the school. And I believe that's why I got the scholarship that I did. And it turned out to be a wonderful experience, even though I encountered a lot of things that I didn't necessarily agree with. I learned to understand them. I learned to articulate my views in a better, stronger way. And overall, I believe everybody's faith grew. From there, I went on and became a pastor or an elder in the United Methodist Church, served little bitty churches and big churches, multicultural churches, rural, suburban, and urban center churches, and also was on our bishop's staff for a while. Through that experience, as we're just seeing continuing to happen in this country, there began to be more and more divides within the church, particularly around theology, but also, as often it happens in institutions, a lot of concern about leadership within the church, mismanagement, and politics. I never saw that as something that I would ever get involved with, but I believe that God had sown in me a seed of concern about justice and social justice, even back when I was doing prison ministry, which was just an amazing experience in itself. I really found that there were things that just did not set well with my soul. And I found myself in a leadership position within the church, especially here in New Jersey, where I live, in helping others with more traditional theology find a voice and to push back and try to find reform within the United Methodist Church. And I eventually became the founding leader of the Greater New Jersey chapter of something called the Wesleyan Covenant Association, and then went on their global council as we found it was just not possible to come to an understanding within the United Methodist Church. We left and we formed the Global Methodist Church.
Ah, okay.
I am someone that has very traditional Methodist or even Methacostal theology, right? But
Hmm.
I've always been called to be progressive in ministry. I've always been called to start something new, whether it's something new in a foreign country, something new in a prison. Even when in the United Methodist Church, I led a number of initiatives that were new ministries. And that's an apostolic gifting that I've been given, but I've also been given a prophetic gift of standing up. And that's not always easy. As we formed the Global Methodist Church, the obvious thing for me to be doing was planting a new church here in New Jersey for the new denomination. And I
Hmm.
was preparing for that. But as I took some time to rest and get ready, started playing around with writing a little more. And there was a story from my life that I had written about back when it first happened. It became clear to me that I needed to write a little more. And the story is this: while I was in seminary, while my kids were almost grown, while I thought I knew where God was taking me and this was all planned out, I had a surprise pregnancy
Mm,
in my mid 40s. And
mid 40s. Wow.
and it rocked my world.
Yeah. I bet. I bet.
and and there were a number of things about it. It was, I was in shock. Like many women, I wound up immediately having concerns about health of the baby, health of mine. What's wrong with me that I'm not overjoyed by this? That, this
Yeah.
doesn't fit with my faith to feel the way I'm feeling. Wait a minute, I'm in a progressive environment, and this is an important part of the story where there are many Christians who do say today, you have a choice, and God is okay with whatever choice you make. And so, in the midst of all that, with hormones running wild and the clock ticking, had to come to a decision. And I have a beautiful 15-year-old daughter and an amazing God story of how he brought such joy through that whole experience. So, the experience really was one of faith and facing into a divided church on that issue, as
Mhm.
well as a divide within the medical community. And I got a lot of different scary stuff out of the medical community. As I recovered from it, realized people need to know this. People don't know
Yes.
that this story is out there. And so wrote a little bit in the beginning about it, but then when I took this hiatus back in 2022, 23, I wrote a screenplay.
Mm,
And it was fun, and it was God kind of bringing me back to something that had been a dream to do. When I was in college, I was like, wow, I would love to write movies someday, but it just wasn't the timing. I wasn't the person to do that yet. And so wrote it, sent it off to the well. As you know, Christian Creatives Conference entered their Oasis contest and won the award for the
mm,
screenplay. It just took off from there. I left out much of the details here. I told you way more of my story than just about the movie, but there was so much ministry involved in even how that screenplay came about. When I decided to write a screenplay, I hadn't written a screenplay in almost 30 years. So I
mhm.
went back to my alma mater and audited as an adult an advanced screenwriting class with a bunch of 18 to 21, 22-year olds, right? And here they were in this very secular university with a female pastor writing a pro-life movie, and we had a great time. Even if they had different views, they came to appreciate mine. Nothing else had come out of this project, and that was it.
Mhm.
That was amazing. But it has continued to have fruit, even as we found a studio to work with and put together the actors and the crew. The opportunity as me being a pastor, then directing the film. I prayed with them, I gave communion. There are actors I've given their first Bible. It's just branched on and on. And so we made the movie, probably the most fun thing I've ever done in my life. Also hard. And there's so many different elements to it, from the writing to the directing to the post-production pieces of it. So many God hands on that as well. And now the part that we're in now, which is working through distribution to get it in the theater and on streaming platforms and so forth. Right now, where we're at with that is we're looking at, well, we'll have a theatrical release in conjunction with Ruby Entertainment in 2026. Give an exact date as soon as I can. And at the same time, right now, we are doing pre-release showings all over the country with churches and pregnancy centers and other pro-life groups. Part of the message I want to get out is, if you have interest, go to our website, go to our Facebook page and Instagram and all that stuff and sign up for information and for us showing. And I'd love to show you more about it. And the trailer for the film is on the website as well. And I'm sure you put all that in the show notes.
Yeah. Wow, so fascinating. And yet we will absolutely have all that information in the show notes. And I remember you saying just a few minutes ago about the fact that when you were in college, you thought, man, wouldn't it be neat to do a screenplay? You didn't have the story yet, right?
That's right. That's right.
So God kind of like he made it perfect timing because he gave you the story. And not only that, but when you went back to school to be able to put this together, just think about the people in your class that you were able to minister to, that if you had done some other story when you were in your 20s, they wouldn't have even been born yet to be able to reap the benefits of your testimony.
That's exactly it. And, and I'll share another, it just only God does this. So when I went back, that class, it turns out the professor graduated with me from Penn. She had gone on and stayed in that world and had written movies and so forth, and now was a professor. And in that class was Joe Biden's granddaughter, Maisie
Wow.
Biden, right? Right? You can't make this stuff up. And
Right.
the professor is first cousins with Kellyanne Conway, who, of course, is part of the Trump world. Now, I
Yeah.
have been very careful. We haven't talked about this at all. Like, one of the scariest part of this experience for me is trying to not get overly involved in the politicization of pro-life, right?
Hmm.
And that's a huge thing to do in today's world. But nonetheless, God was putting me right in the middle of it, starting with that class. And as I said, it went really well.
Hmm. That's so beautiful. So you wrote the screenplay, you got an award from the screenplay, but then there's a huge jump between that and actually getting the actors, deciding that you're going to be the one
Yeah.
directing and all that. Tell us a little bit about how that all came to be and how
Yeah,
God
sure.
opened doors for you to be able to meet the people that you needed to meet.
Sure. Well, it's amazing. I think the first piece of that was just being introduced to a Christian film studio with a group that has a heart for launching people into this kind of career, right?
Hmm.
And being encouraged to just go for it. That was the first piece of it. And then the second was just being introduced to the right people at the right time. I left the well and went down to there's something called the International Christian Film Festival in Orlando, Florida. Went down there, had never done anything like that in my life, and got a really good, quick education on the filmmaking process. Was then invited while I was in Florida over to the Tampa area where there was a Christian film being made, and I was introduced to Jana Lee Hamblin, who wound up co-directing the film with me and being the star, playing me.
Mm.
And she's fabulous veteran actress. She was on The West Wing the first 3 years of that show. And then she's done some other secular work like Portlandia and other shows that you would know. I laugh because people said, well, you guys kind of look alike. But she's got this amazing heart. And when she read the script, my favorite part was, she came to me and she said, Beth, I was far into the script, more than halfway, before I was even sure what the answer you were going to come to was. And she's like, I loved that. And it kept me engaged. And I want to do this role, but I also want to direct. And I'm
Mhm.
like, Janet, you got like 75% of the lines in this thing. How can you direct it?
Right.
And, but when I look, she has this amazing experience of, along with acting, she has been an acting coach and actually had an acting school for many years, which in the Christian film world, that is ideal to have someone to have that experience. I had also been nudged by my studio friend that I should direct it. I know the story. So what made sense to me was, Jana, what if we co-directed? And it was a beautiful thing. And we have become great friends. I also met Eddie McClintock, who plays my husband in it, through that same production. And there were just introductions like that all over the place. And that's really how, for better for worse, the film industry works. It's relationships, right? And to be able to jump from absolutely no relationship with any of these folks to, in less than 6 months from completing the script to starting filming, again, that's God. That is God.
Absolutely.
The other part that is important to say is, so, well, what about being a minister, right?
Mhm.
So I am still ordained in the Global Methodist Church, and they have appointed me to a faith-based filmmaking ministry. And
Wow.
so what I am commissioned to do is, one, get the films made.
Hmm.
Two, encourage churches to develop and encourage other Christians to utilize their creative gifts in the film world. And that's something that we're starting to recognize more and more in the church are the power of these creative gifts, and recognizing that movies, TV, books, the platform is huge. A verse that was prophesied over me was from Isaiah. Get yourself up on a high mountain and declare to the world, here
Mm.
is your God. And
Yes.
it became very clear to me that, at least at this time in my life, that high mountain is on this faith-based filmmaking journey. And I say this all the time. I feel so out on a limb, both in terms of beyond my own ability, also in terms of I don't know where the next step's coming from. And it has put me further into faith than I thought I could go, when I thought I've been pretty far.
Hmm.
And I won't say that I'm a Pollyanna or someone who just is perfectly aligned with my faith all the time. I'm not. I have my doubt, I have my fear, I have all those things too. But it's been an amazing journey, and I know that He never just leaves us there. And
Yes.
however this goes, the Lord is blessing many through it, and I'm just humbled to be part of it.
I think that's just so amazing, so beautiful. So I have a good idea about what Conceivable, what the story is about. What's the main message that you want to send through this film?
Even though this film is about an unplanned pregnancy to an older woman, the main message of it is, whenever life throws you curveballs, whenever it doesn't go according to your plan, seek God and He'll make your path straight. That is the number one message of it. The other goals of the film are to shine a light on a reality that older women do have surprise pregnancies, and it's more common than you think. And most in today's world are choosing to abort, which surprises many people. But the reasons for that are very different. And so I wanted to show that and help bring awareness as well as compassion by authentically showing why and what that looks like and what they feel. The other key to this movie is hoping to be a conversation starter. This is not a film that I wrote to preach to the choir. Yes, it's pro-life and pro-lifers will enjoy it, but the movie also is true to showing other views and leaving it out there, not in a demonizing way, but instead in a way for folks to look at it and have a real conversation. Not just on the unplanned pregnancy issue. There are a number of issues that come up in the film that, surprise, in our divided world, are always controversial. But I try to be true to just putting views out there and then allowing the Holy Spirit to work with people as they could talk through these things and say, yeah, well, here's what I believe about that. Here's what I just saw that I liked. Here's what I just saw that disturbed me. I'm not afraid of that with the movie, and that's what I really hope happens.
Now, I know you had talked about we can go on the website and we can see how we can get the film in our church, like for a pre-showing and that kind of thing. And I actually know that somebody in my church is already working with the pastor on that. So I hope it ends up coming to fruition. But I also just thought about for prayer. It sounds like you're pretty much done with everything, but how can we pray for you going forward for the film, for you individually, for the other actors? Maybe the promotion, anything at all, how would you have us pray for you?
Oh, thank you so much, because that's the most important thing. No, everything isn't done. The biggest piece that isn't done yet is all the funding for the marketing that we have planned, right?
Okay.
It's
Mhm.
always the money, but God
Yes.
always has the plan with it. So just that the right doors and hearts are opened on that. Part of our fundraising is doing these pre-release showings that are getting out there and people are using as tools. But more than that is just that God continues to put us in front of the right people for hearts to be warmed and turned toward Him. Wherever they are on whatever issue, just that it continues to be something that shines His light. And for protection in doing that, boldness in doing that, patience, strength, on a very human level, I can tell you this is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rejection involved. I've just talked about all the amazing doors that have opened, which
Mhm.
are very true, but there's also plenty of them that don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One question that I have for you, one of the things I love about your story and just talking with you today is I love your yes, Lord. Like that's what you are. You're yes, Lord. And I know that God has even put things in front of you that you thought, wait a minute, what? That's
Yeah.
not how I thought it was going to go. But yes, Lord, talk to that person who might be struggling right now, who they feel like the Lord is asking them to do something that seems a little bit outlandish, a little bit unorthodox. How can they know it's from Him, and what encouragement can you share with them today?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I'll answer it both from a here are some steps and here's from the heart. The steps are definitely seek Him with all your heart in prayer, journal it. Go ahead and do your positive column and your negative column. Seek the scriptures. Talk to your pastor, talk to your friends, listen to all of it. But in the end, he will speak to your heart. The marker that always seems to be there every time I've been called to do something like go to prison, which I was terrified to do, by the way, right? Um, is there's something, even though I'm afraid, there's something that there's a little excitement about it.
Hmm.
I remember a time in my husband and my life where there was a decision that we were trying to make, and we were praying and praying over it, and we were just delaying, make the decision, delaying. And finally, our pastor said, "Did you decide that thing?" "No, we're still praying." And he looked at us and he said, if you're really seeking God on this, just make your decision. He'll make your path straight.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the best advice I ever got. It is advice that I have repeated over and over as a pastor and as a friend and as a mom. And it is so true. And does it always mean that it's going to be the easiest path? No.
Hmm.
Sometimes, usually not. But there is a peace that just comes upon you that even though, okay, I don't know anything about this, or there is real danger out there, or this is a financial scary thing, whatever it is, there is a peace that He is with you. And that makes it all worth it. You're going to make me tear up here, but when I think about that, has been my life journey. So many of those experiences, I wouldn't be me if I hadn't have had them. I'm sure there are times that I probably should have said yes and I didn't, but they don't stand out to me.
Hmm.
They don't stand out.
Thank God for your willingness to be able to move forward on this project. I just know that it's going to bless the hearts and the lives of the living and also the unborn. I think that people are going to make the decision for life. And I thank God that God is going to use you in that way. So
thank you. It's wonderful that you would have me on here and that we could talk about this and that I can plug Conceivable.
yes,
And, if anyone wants to reach out to me through the website, I am happy to talk to you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick, if this episode blessed you in some way, I'd love it if you leave a written review for the show over on Apple Podcasts. These are like gold to me. Reviews help me know what you enjoy while providing insight on what you want to learn about. Also, take a screenshot of your review or this episode so that you can share it on your Facebook or Instagram stories. For Facebook, tag me at Anna Moore Bradfield Author. For Instagram, use Anna Moore Bradfield. When I share you back in my stories, both our lights will shine a little brighter. May you witness God's power in your life today,